Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Stealth Hitch rack receiver kit on a 2023 Audi SQ5. Now this is what your hitch will look like when it's installed. And you may be wondering, well, where is it? And that's where it gets the name Stealth Hitch, because when you're not using your hitch, it's going to give you a completely factory look because the receiver block is hidden right here behind the fascia. And so when you are ready to load up accessories, it's as simple as turning a knob back, locking that in place, and putting in your 2-inch receiver tube opening. And with that locked in place, you're ready to start using your hitch. Now, with your 2-inch receiver tube opening in place, you're ready to load up your bike rack or cargo carrier, and it's going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. Now, this is not included with the hitch installation kit, but it is required to get your accessories in place. And a lot of times your accessories will come with one. If you want to pick up a locking version, that's pretty nice to have. If you plan on leaving those accessories on, we have plenty of options available here at eTrailer. Now there are no safety chain loops on this receiver, and that's because this is not the tow kit. If you plan on towing a trailer, you can pick up the separate kit, which is going to install essentially the same, but instead of a receiver opening, you're going to have a ball mount. It's also going to come with the safety chains as well as the wiring to make sure that you're able to tow that trailer safely. So this is really set up for bike racks and cargo carriers only. Now this is going to have a pretty serious tongue weight at 600 pounds, so if you plan on putting a 4-bike rack or a large cargo carrier loaded up, you should be okay. And that's a pretty hefty tongue weight, so just keep in mind the weight of the accessories plus whatever you're loading it up, and not to go over that 600 pounds. And something else I'll point out is where this receiver tube opening is in line, a lot of your accessories might be right in the way of both the dual exhausts, so something to keep in mind when choosing those accessories. Make sure that nothing's going to get burnt while you have it loaded up. Now something that I will point out that is kind of beneficial in that aspect is going to be our hitch pin hole is pretty much in line here with the furthest point of the rear fascia, so any folding accessories, I don't worry too much that it's going to make contact with the rear fascia of the vehicle. You may have to worry about the hatch making contact, something to kind of keep in mind there, but it's nice that it sticks out a little bit further. That way it's going to be a little further from the exhaust and hopefully cuts down on any potential for damage. Now, if you're worried about someone just walking by and stealing your receiver tube opening, not to worry. There is a key lock on the side of it that has a nice cap to keep it clean, and you have 2 keys included to allow you to lock that in place. So this is going to be nice and solid. And whenever you're ready to remove it, you'll just simply unlock, twist this knob, and then this is going to drop out, bringing you back to that nice clean OEM look. Also included is a rubber cap that can go in the bottom of that receiver block, and that's going to keep it nice and clean for whenever you need to drop your receiver in. Now as far as the installation goes, the fascia is going to have to come off. The hitch bolts up behind the rear impact bar. So in order to get this one off, you do have to pull out quite a bit of the interior. German cars in general are very well put together, but that also means it takes a little bit to pull them apart. Now I'm going to walk you through every single one of those steps to make sure you get it installed. So let's take a look at it. To begin our installation, we're going to open up our hatch, and that's going to give us access to 2 plastic screws that we find right on the rear fascia. And this is going to be a T20 Torx bit to get these removed. So there's one on each side, so we'll get these removed here. And throughout the whole process, there's going to be quite a bit of hardware that we're taking off to get our hitch in place. So I recommend having a nice organized spot to keep all your hardware to make reinstallation that much easier. Now we're going to go to each wheel well. And right behind the tire, you're going to reach back here. This wheel well will peel back, and that's going to give us access to the screw that's holding on our fascia. But to get this started, you'll just kind of reach right back here behind the plastic. It's going to be hard to see, so you're going to have to kind of use your fingers to find it. But this is going to be a T25 Torx bit. So we'll go ahead and get this one removed. And then once you get that taken out, what you're going to want to do is take the inside wheel well liner and just kind of work this up outside of the wheel well. And that's going to give us access to the rest of the T25. So best thing you can do is just work your fingers up. So there's one here, and you'll make your way all the way to, there should be one up here. I'll give you a final count of the hardware once I have this off. Now this is kind of tricky with the tire here, so you might have to, I'm using a electric ratchet here. It makes it easy, but you might have to use just a small ratchet to get into here. last one's right here. And they're kind of tricky to get to, especially because this wheel well arch trim here kind of gets in the way. So if you need to, you can kind of pull a little bit back on there to get a straight shot on that bolt. So that makes for a total of 4 of those T25 bits. We had 1 on the liner and then 3 going up. So make sure you get all of those. And from here, we're going to take our arch and kind of pop this back. There's going to be some clips that kind of hold it in. If you can push on the tabs, it'll make it a little bit easier, but you can just simply kind of peel this back. And once you get one, it's going to make it easier to get the other clips. Just kind of work your fingers up and just put light pressure on it. You don't want to peel back too far. Just kind of work your way up. And right about here is where you're going to want to stop. Don't peel it back anymore. You don't want to crease your paint and cause damage to it. But this will give us enough access to gain to remove this T25, so go ahead and do that. So you can go ahead and repeat that on the other side of the vehicle. And something I'm going to do just for a little added protection is run some painter's tape along our clips here. That way, if it does kind of rub against the fascia when we're removing it, or as you're just kind of working on it, it's not going to scratch the clear coat. Something else that I'm going to do while we're here with the tape is run a line here and here, so on the fascia as well as the rear quarter. Again, because when we remove the fascia, we don't want to be scratching anything in the process. So this is just a nice, easy way to help protect against that. So I went ahead and repeated it on the other side. I got those screws taken out and our paint on there. Now we're going to head underneath the fascia where we're going to find 4 T25 screws that are going right at the bottom here on the plastic. So go ahead and get those removed. Now inside of our vehicle and the hatch, we're going to remove this compartment. So just twist this and it should come out. Now on the passenger side, there is a 12-volt charging outlet. So we want to separate that. There's just going to be a clip at the top that should be able to allow us to get this to separate. So the inside clip is kind of hard to get. So use your fingernail there and then it slides out. You can see this slightly curved portion inside. You're just going to want to push that down and that should remove it. So we'll take this one out. We'll also do the same on the other side. There may not be a 12-volt outlet though. Now with these removed, I suggest setting them aside somewhere safe because we're going to be removing quite a few more panels from the inside to gain access to the hardware for our hitch. So place these wherever you want. You can also go ahead, take any of your liners that you may have and set that aside as well. We'll also get our cargo cover removed here. So we'll go ahead and also take our spare tire out. So we just twist this knob, and then there's a lot of times you'll have a factory subwoofer that goes in your spare tire, and that's just going to be separated on this plug here. So I'll get this loose first. And then once you have the subwoofer inset removed, you can just pull back that red tab, which is a locking clip, push down on there, and that should separate our plug. And our main goal with pulling all this out is to gain access to be able to pull this threshold panel up where there's going to be hardware to get our hitch or our fascia removed and also our hitch put back on. So we'll go ahead and get our spare tire moved out. Now we need to get the foam insert out. It does seem pretty excessive, but the main thing is we need to get this threshold out, and we're going to be working in this area. So having this all out is going to give us that area to work with. So you can go ahead, take your jack out, also take out your compressor. And then next we'll go to the 4 luggage hooks that you'll see kind of in the track there. We're going to want to pry up the plastic. So just a flathead screwdriver should kind of accomplish that. Just kind of work on that edge. That'll pop up. And that's going to give us access to a T40 Torx bit. So we'll go ahead and get that removed. And then I'll just repeat for the remaining 3. So now to get the center section out, we can remove this trim where we had our luggage hooks. And it's kind of interlocks with the plastic. So just kind of take your time here and we'll get this pried out. There's a tab here on the center threshold that kind of goes in there. So you may just kind of have to put that up at an angle to get that to unhook. You can kind of just lift up on the plastic. And now we can remove this center section, and that's going to allow us to kind of draw this foam together to kind of get this removed. So I'm going to raise this up here, try to get it over the battery. It's kind of a tight squeeze here. Let's see if we can work on this side maybe. Now this foam is still pretty tight in here. I kind of had to kind of peel this back. There's a plastic clip that kind of held that in place, but you just kind of pry that out and then work this out. It snaps kind of into here. But once you get this one side up, it should make the rest of it come up a little bit easier. So you'll see here, that's that clip I was talking about. You just kind of have to raise that above it and then peel this back up. And then once you get both sides like that, the rest of it should slide out. So your subwoofer wire, just kind of move that out of the way for now. Grab your center section, and then we can set this aside. So now we're going to remove our threshold here. There's these clips, and it looks like you need to slide this up. So just with a little bit of pressure, just kind of pull up on the bottom portion here, and it should pop out these clips so you can see where those are located. So just pulling straight up is going to be the ticket for that. So with the threshold removed, there's a total of 4 grommets that you'll see along here. We're going to remove the outer larger ones. You should be able to kind of just pry those out with your finger. And if you reach in, you're going to feel a stud. And there's a 10mm nut that's on there. So you're going to need a deep well socket here so it can slide over the stud and allow you to get to that 10-inch nut. Now be careful with these. It's kind of hard to see, but you're going to want to draw straight in. And once you loosen it, I recommend maybe having a magnet or something ready to grab that nut, because if this drops down, it can make for a little bit trickier of an reinstallation. So I'm going to grab an extension. We'll get this removed, and then we're also going to do the same on the other outside grommet. So go ahead and get that nut taken off. And you might be able to squeeze your fingers in there, but again, it is pretty tight. Now, once you loosen it up, there's a longer portion on that stud where it should just kind of sit there. So that's a good time. Once you loosen it, you should be able to feel that kind of moving on the stud. That's when you're going to want to take your magnet and grab that. Now there's going to be 2 more that are pretty much identical to that. There's no grommet, but it's just kind of tucked right here. There's an open spot. You're going to have that on both sides. So right inside of this cargo compartment here, we'll go ahead and get that 10mm removed as well. Now at this point, we're going to get ready to remove our fascia. You're going to want to grab an extra set of hands here. This one gets a little bit tricky because you cannot separate the electrical connector that's located on the driver's side of the fascia. So you want something set up to where you can kind of rest the fascia without getting damaged. So we have a fascia cart here. Now to remove the fascia, it's not technically that hard. It's just a series of clips along here. So just kind of grab behind the fascia here, and just a little bit of pressure here allows us to pop these clips out. And again, just kind of like we did on the wheel well, just kind of slowly work your way here to where you can get these clips to pop out. And the center section, all of this will kind of separate once you get these clips out on both sides. And at this point, this is kind of where it gets tricky. So the studs that we removed, that 10mm bolt, you'll see those kind of slide out. So as we make our way over, I'm going to take a look at this plug and see if we can't loosen it up a little bit. Again, make sure you don't unplug it. Now I removed a bracket that's holding on one of the wires. It's this red one that's tucked down here. There's 2 10mm bolt or nuts that I removed. This bracket just bolts up here. So I took that off. There's also a clip that was kind of attached to the bottom portion of the fascia. You can kind of just pop that off. So now at this point, we're going to try to slide this out. The wires are still pretty tight here. There's another clip that's kind of located right underneath the bumper beam, right above the exhaust. I just pushed that off. You can see this is just a metal clip that snaps onto the edge here. So pushing that off took some of the tension out. We also removed the grommet here just to give us a little bit more to work with. And now we're going to just kind of set this aside here. So as long as it's out of the way, the main thing is we're going to be gaining access to where our bumper beam is. This is where our hitch is going to bolt up. So we have 4 bolts on each side of the bumper impact beam. This is going to be a 16 millimeter socket. An extension I recommend here because you can pass it through here to get to these lower ones. You can also probably use a ratcheting wrench to gain access to these as well. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to get these all taken out. I might leave one just with a few threads in so it supports it while I get the other side. Sometimes there's tabs that hold it in place, but not always. So we don't want this falling down on us. And now that I look at it, there is a stud that's down here, so you could probably remove this. It's not going to cause any issue, but that's just a nice little added protection just in case. Now you might have noticed this top bracket becoming loose. This is just bolted in with the top 4 bolts. This is not going to get reinstalled, so you can take this out. We're also not going to be using the factory hardware. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a stud that kind of holds this in place, but you can see it has the potential to fall. But we'll go ahead, get this removed. Don't move this too far because this will get reinstalled pretty quickly here once we get our hitch in place. Now at this point, we're going to put our hitch in place, and then our bumper impact beam is going to slide right over it. And then we're going to put new hardware in all of those same 4 spots. Make sure that you have this ready to go. It's going to make it a lot easier. That way you can hand thread these in. So you have a split washer and then a flat washer. Just make sure they're all in that orientation. At least have 2 of them ready because my goal is to get one hand tightened or at least started on each side. That way it's going to support itself. So that factory stud here, you can rest the hitch on here. It may not hold it up. It's holding it decent enough. But I'll go ahead and get my bumper impact beam and feed this on top of it. And then I'm going to just start one on each side here. And we'll go ahead and get the remainder of the hardware in place. Now, it does kind of put it at an awkward angle here, so until you get all of the hardware, you may have to kind of lift the hitch up and play around with the factory impact bar to get this lined up. Now I'm just going to snug these up with a 17 millimeter socket. You don't have to get too crazy here. It's just going to draw everything in. We're going to be coming back with the torque wrench to really get the proper torque on it. So don't go nuts here, especially if you're using an impact. Just enough to be snug is fine. And then as far as torque setting goes, you're going to find that torque setting in the instruction manual. So get your torque wrench dialed into that, and then we'll go through, get these all properly torqued. And this is important. It's going to make sure that it's going to be tight enough for the lifespan of the hitch. It's also not going to be too tight, putting stress on the hardware or the factory weld nuts. If you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free, but make sure you are doing this step. Now grab your receiver block and we'll get this bolted up to our hitch receiver. Our bolts are going to go in from the passenger side over, and then we'll have our nylon locking nuts to get that tightened up on the driver's side. So just raise the block in place and then feed your bolts through. I'm just going to get these started. And we do have to torque these down as well. It's a fairly high torque setting, so you're going to probably need a 1/2-inch torque wrench to accomplish this. So if you're buying one or renting one, you might want to look for that. And what we're going to do for torquing this down, you always want to try to torque on the nut side. It's going to give you a better torque setting and actually be a little bit more accurate. So we'll take a box wrench here on the head of the bolt and just kind of put this in place to keep that from spinning. And then I'll take my, I'm going to take my impact, snug these down a little bit until we get close, and then I'll take my torque wrench and get these torqued down. So now at this point, we're almost ready to get our fascia put back on, but what I'm going to do is there's a rubber plug on the bottom of our receiver. Just pop that out, and you're going to have your keys in there. And there's going to be a 5-digit number that's on the key. In your instructions, you're going to want to record that key code here. Just in case you ever lose it, you'll have this as reference so you can get a spare set of keys ordered. So go ahead and do that now. Now, as I'm putting everything back, I kind of realized that this sensor here on the bracket doesn't really need to be removed. The main thing is these metal parts that bite into the metal are really what's kind of holding this back, as well as our grommet here. When removing the fascia, that's kind of what you're going to want to look for. So now we can go ahead and get our fascia installed in the reverse order that we took it out. I'm going to show you a quick tip on getting those 10mm nuts put back in place without dropping them down. So when I get to that point, I'll show you that. Now to get those 10mm nuts put back on the stud, if you can, you might be able to feed this on there with your fingers, but it's pretty tight. So if you're struggling and don't want to drop them, a little pro tip here that we do is just take a small piece of a shop towel or a paper towel and put that in the socket, and then once you press this in, you can see it kind of holds that in place, allowing you to get this started. So now we'll just get everything put back in place, all of our wheel well screws, and then all of our interior panels, and then I'll show you the rest of how the Stealth Hitch works. So now that we have everything put back in place, I'm going to show you how to get your receiver opening into the receiver block. Now there's going to be a rubber cap here, and that's going to go onto our tumbler for our key. And to loosen it up, you're going to take your key, slide this in the tumbler, and it's spring loaded. So when that pops back, it's going to be open. And at this point, you can twist this back, and it's going to lock this pin down. You'll then take your receiver, press this up. You should hear that pop in place. And with that snapped in, that means that it's ready to go. So at this point, you can choose to lock this in. You just push that tumbler in and twist it, and then you're ready to go. And that was a look at installation of the Stealth Hitch rack receiver kit on a 2023 Audi SQ5.